and I want to make sure that we get all of the time that we have. So we're going to get started. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the OCDA virtual conference. I hope that you had meaningful and insightful conversations during our roundtable sessions. I was able to pop around back and forth between all of the sessions, and there were really great conversations being had. So I hope that those were really useful to you. I'm thrilled to introduce our next clinician, Dr. Scott Edgar, and his session, Social Emotional Learning and Music Education, Now More Than Ever. Dr. Edgar is in his 8th year as Associate Professor of Music, Music Education Chair, and Director of Bands at Lake Forest College in Illinois. He holds degrees from the University of Michigan, the University of Dayton, and Bowling Green State University. Prior to his work in higher education, he taught K-12 instrumental music in Ohio and Michigan. Dr. Edgar is the author of Music Education and Social Emotional Learning, I brought a prop, The Heart of Teaching, published by GIA, and he is an internationally sought after clinician on the topic. Please help me welcome Dr. Scott Edgar.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Brandon. I'm honored to be able to join you. For those of you who are from Ohio, I'm an Ohio boy, born and raised. I went to Bowling Green from Columbus, Ohio. And then as we were joking around a little bit, I sold my soul and went to the University of Michigan. So sorry, but go blue. But you know what? I was also saying that how I'm starved to be able to get back to those kinds of discussions, how I'm starved to get back to those things that enrich. And oh, wow. How starved am I to get back to be able to make music with my kids? You know, social and emotional learning, which we're going to be talking about a lot today, but we're also going to be talking about what it means for us as musicians. So important for us to be able to wrap our heads around, you know what? It took a pandemic for us to hear the term social and emotional learning now more than ever. My guess is you're getting it from your principals, you're getting it from your districts, the states, you're getting them from many, many people who are saying, folks, this is the time, and this is important. But the truth is, we've been doing this for a really long time. Social and emotional learning has been with us since 1994, but it took a pandemic to put a magnifying glass over it. You know what? This picture is something that we've seen a lot. We've seen this picture in our classrooms. We've seen this picture in our communities. But you know what? What made this picture happen is so much worse now. And there's a critical question that I need to ask you. Can this person learn effectively? And I hope that your answer is no. This person cannot learn effectively. This fall, we are going to be encountering students who have gone through so much trauma. We are going to be encountering students who have gone through so many challenges as part of this pandemic. When we see them in the fall, it will have been 6 months since they engaged in organized education. We're going to see a lot of emotion. We're going to see a lot of things that are going to manifest that we're going to need to be prepared for. And you know what? If we don't help our students socially and emotionally first, we don't stand a chance in accomplishing anything musically. We have to meet the students' human needs first. You know, we are in a rare time right now. We're in a rare time. We have a common human experience. Every single human on this planet is swimming in the ocean of a pandemic right now. Think about that. We have a common human experience. But pause, we're not all experiencing it the same way. Some of us are experiencing it in a rowboat, and some of us are experiencing it in a yacht. And I'm going to leave it to you to think about what puts someone in a rowboat or a yacht. Certainly the price of privilege, certainly the price of resources. We know that equity had a huge part in the success or not success of our students' education when we had to pivot on a dime last semester and go remote. But I would also argue that one of the yacht-worthy things is what type of social and emotional skill building they had ahead of the pandemic. That could help put us in a yacht. Because the challenges that we're experiencing on a daily basis, the pandemic did nothing but throw gasoline on them. Nothing. You know, how do you shelter in place if you don't have a shelter? If food was an issue ahead of the pandemic, how big of an issue is it now? We know that the challenges of addiction, of domestic violence, of cyberbullying have skyrocketed since the pandemic, and the unemployment rates are through the roof. All of the challenges now are so much more intense. We've seen this on the interwebs. It's beautiful, and I'm going to highlight it and highlight it strong. 2 educational psychologists, and then I'll get off the ed psych side of things. Maslow, who came up with the hierarchy of human needs, before Bloom, the thought of higher order thinking. If we can't even sniff at upper level musicianship, we can't even think about getting us to comprehend and retain any knowledge until we deal with our human needs. You know, when we're in trauma, our brain functions differently. It does not comprehend what it used to be able to comprehend. You're not the teacher you were 3 months ago. I'm not the teacher I was 3 months ago, and our students certainly aren't the students they were 3 months ago. And it's because our brains are in fight or flight mode. When we have trauma, the brains do not retain at the level. So if we want any meaningful learning to happen this fall, it has to be Maslow first. And here's that hierarchy of human needs. Physiological needs. I'm guessing that most people in on this webinar have their physiological needs met. We are able to, for some level, be a yacht. We have internet, we have technology, we're engaging in a professional event. That's huge. Safety needs. Nobody is having those met. Nobody is having safety needs completely met. Here comes the comment, folks, which means the rest of the Maslow hierarchy of human needs is not even on the table, which means Bloom is not on the table until we can nourish this and address this. In education, we like either ors. We don't like living in the middle. We like either going so far in one direction that we are hitting testing hot and heavy. We are hitting all of the challenges that we're facing hot and heavy in terms of show me what you know, what you're doing, no child left behind, standardized testing. But we went so far in that direction that the pendulum had nowhere else to go. And it was going to go all the way over here. And this is where we started to see SEL build steam. And then what happened? A pandemic. And it's going to shoot student first approach and social and emotional learning in the other direction as far as it can go. But that's not good either. That's going to come down. And because we live in this world of either ors in education, essential, non-essential subjects, we're hearing it all the time, arts, no arts. We don't like living in this world where everything can cohabitate. Well, we're going to have to this fall. We're going to be expected to teach music and to do it well. But it's going to have a student first approach. And I believe SEL is a path to get us there. Social and emotional learning in music, as I call it, MSEL, it's our secret weapon with superpowers. And for those of us who are engaging students on a daily basis and seeing what music means in their lives, we know this. It may not be as much of a secret weapon as I'm putting it here, but are we really capitalizing on the superpowers? At its simplest, SEL allows us to respond instead of react. And let me tell you, folks, I'm seeing a ton of reaction right now, whether it be on social media, whether it be on the news, whether it be in our own lives. You know, things that might not have set us off 3 months ago seem like mountains. And, you know, mountains out of molehills. Let's be a little sensitive to ourselves and be forgiving of ourselves. That's huge. SEL tries to give us the skills so that we can still respond instead of react. Now, here's what is a really critical point that I want to hit as hard as I can. It's preventative mental health care. It helps provide us with skills ahead of a trauma or a challenge. Ahead. This is what we do as music teachers. We prepare our students to hear intervals. We prepare them to blend, to understand vowel shape, to understand proper vocal technique. Preventative, as opposed to reactive. Reactive, well, that's the folks who are the counselors, the social workers, the therapist. SEL is not about making you a therapist. SEL is about embedding into music the process to be able to teach these life skills to help our students encounter challenges and respond to them instead of react. We are not counselors, nor should we ever be asked to be counselors. We're the music teachers. And I am aware, I'm going to pause right now. I am aware that there might be some liturgical musicians. There might be some choir directors who are engaging in other avenues within the choral world. And I appreciate that. Know that my background is purely music education, but I think we can all make these connections to our own. And if you need help making these connections of what it would look like in different settings, throw them in the Q&A and we'll address them at the end. But we're the music teachers. Our students and the people who come to us to learn music have never honestly trusted the counselors or the social workers. They trust us. They trust us because we teach them music, something that they love. And they trust us because we've seen them for so many years. It's called developmental relationships. And we develop relationships in a deeper, more meaningful way because we see our students year after year after year. We see them more than any other teacher in our school. That is a powerful opportunity for us to take advantage of. Your students need you. They are thirsting for music education. And they can still press play. They're still getting music. But that's not what it's all about. It's about the communal music making guided by us. Now more than ever, we need to remember the human being on the other side of the music stand. We don't teach music. We teach kids. We teach humans. And that's what this is all about. Our avenue, our noun is music. But it's about the human being. So to start into this discussion, we need to ask ourselves, what motivates you? And I'm going to be honest. These days, not much. Every day looks the same, right? Monotony. It is get up, go through the routine. Motivation is hard to come by. I don't have as many look forward tos. There is so much uncertainty now that short-term and long-term goals, well, my short-term goal is to get through today. My long-term goal is to get through tomorrow. And that's the reality of where we are. So we need to look hard to see what still motivates our students so that we can be effective educators. One of the things is peer acceptance. And they're not getting peer socialization right now at the level that they're used to and that they need for adolescence and for their lives. Our goal is going to have to be to facilitate safe, we're going to talk about the word safe a ton, safe socialization. Double-sided arrows, student to student, student to teacher, teacher to teacher. The one-sided arrow in education, teacher to student, it doesn't work as if it ever did, but it's certainly not going to work in the fall. We need to get students engaged with each other so that they feel the value of peer connectedness. Teacher approval. You know what? They're not getting applause. We've painted ourselves into a corner in music education that said our definition of good music and good music education is the performance and this. Our students believe that. Our administrators believe that. Many parents believe that. And we've even come to believe that. Well, our students aren't getting that level of validation anymore. We need to be there to show them when they're doing well. Say, hey, nice job. Might not be product-based, but any advancement is needed and needs to be validated. Teacher approval. Pride. This is a hard one because pride was something that many of us did really well when we got to see our kids every day. But now, one of the biggest questions I'm getting on a daily basis is, Scott, how do I build relationships? How do I build trust? How do I build pride when this is what it looks like? Ooh. The answer is you're not going to be able to do it as effectively. That's the blanket answer. But the answer, there are some things that we can do, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. But pride is going to be a huge motivator. And here's the secret. Your students can build pride in a way that you never will be able to. If your students are on board and are helping to build that pride, that's where you'll see takeaway. And it will take things off of your shoulders. You know what? Anger. We see a lot of anger today, and a lot of it is rightfully placed. But here's my challenge for you. When we see anger, what are we really seeing? Oftentimes it's fear. Oftentimes it's anxiety, disappointment, maybe even boredom. Whatever that looks like on the inside, it's manifesting as anger. In this fall, we're going to see a lot of anger in our schools for a lot of different reasons. There's going to be a lot of anger in our schools. We're going to have tools to help our students de-escalate and preventatively help our students navigate the challenges, the fear, the anxiety. We're going to have to build trust from ground zero, because for these last few months, we have been taught not to trust each other. Oh, you're within 6 feet of me, back off, right? We have been taught not to trust each other. And then fear. No one is motivated when we're in fear. That's why this fall, if we do not have firm structures so that we are safe in our teaching environment and to understand what that looks like, no one's going to be motivated. Your students are going to be so preoccupied with fear. We're going to be so preoccupied with fear that teaching and learning will be off the table. We have to account for fear before we can talk about learning. And then boredom. We talked about monotony, right? Boredom is the ultimate demotivator. We have to dig deep and find ways to be unique, to be different, to think in a different way. All these behaviors that we're seeing that are coming to us, our role now is not to get upset, not to get frustrated, not to give demerits, not to do any of the things that might have been on the table, if ever, before. Now, we need to ask the question, why? Why is the behavior happening? And lead with empathy. Our role is to figure it out, not to think about punishing, to help our students really have the skills to grow and to build and to be the musicians that we want them to be. So enter SEL. SEL, like I said, has been around since 1994, but it took a pandemic to put a magnifying glass over it. It took a pandemic to realize that, hey, this thing might be important. You know, for those of us who've been looking at SEL for a while, this is like our moment. Put us in, coach. We're ready for this. But, you know, SEL is not pandemic preparation. SEL is for all of us and all of the challenges that we're dealing with. I firmly believe that social and emotional learning is not a flavor of the day, and it's not going anywhere. It's been around, and it's embedded in policy on so many different levels. It will be with us because it values our students, and it values the skill set to make them stronger socially and emotionally, but also academically, and I believe musically. So here's a 40,000-foot view definition for you while you're scanning this, please. 3 words in red. It's a skill set. So just how you teach your students to sing, to hear, to blend, to balance, SEL is a skill, which means it can be practiced and it can be improved upon. If you think about a relationship in your life that's going well, my guess is you're nourishing it. You're giving it attention. You are practicing it. It's a skill. A relationship not so going so well right now, it's probably not being nourished. SEL is a skill. You know, SEL is not about don't do drugs. SEL is not about don't bully. SEL is not about having responsible relationships. SEL is in a huge umbrella that these skills map onto. So SEL can do all those things and many more. And it's happening in schools. So I'm going to dissect it down into 5 key components for you, but don't worry, I'm going to clean it up into 3 because our memories right now, not kicking on all cylinders. It's cool. So self-awareness. How am I feeling? If I were to come into our discussions and say, how you doing? My guess is you're going to either get good, bad, fine, hungry, or tired. And the answer is hungry and tired aren't emotions. They're physical states, which leaves me with good, bad, and fine. Doesn't cut it, folks. We need so much more for us to be able to understand how we're feeling. The first step of SEL is to equip our students with an emotional vocabulary beyond good, bad, and fine. And then to be able to articulate the root of those emotions. So this is how I'm feeling, and this is why I'm feeling that way. Off awareness, we get self-management. Self-management is not sending that email. We all know that email. Not saying something you're going to regret, not punching a hole in the wall, not punching another person. Self-management is the pause button. The saying, here's how I'm feeling. It's about to get to a place where I'm not comfortable with the emotion. Pause. Self-management, de-escalation. Now you say, what's this look like in music education? We do it really, really well. We do it expertly. You know, it's called a concert. Goal setting plus time management. Here's my goal and here's how much time I have to get there. For our little ones, I want us in a circle on the carpet in 60 seconds. Go. Goal setting, time management. for a concert. Here's where I want to be 1 week out of the concert. Here's where I want to be 2 weeks out of the concert. Here's where I want to be right after we sight read. It's all about thinking about self-management. We don't call it self-management. We call it music education. And then social awareness. And I'm not going to hide from this question, folks. We are living in a world right now that is dealing with a lot of challenges. We're dealing with a world right now that is dealing with a lot of issues with racism, dealing with a lot of issues with equity and inclusion. And SEL can help with all of those when led by compassion, when led by this idea that social and emotional learning needs to honor the voice of everybody, and when led by this idea that we can appreciate diversity and capitalize on the differences and the benefits that we can all bring to the table if we lead with empathy. Empathy is the most important word that I can say right now as associated with social awareness. And with so many things that we're talking about that fall under the umbrella of social awareness, the biggest thing that I can say is that when we don't lead with empathy and we don't have a skill set, this is where I'm seeing more reaction than responding. If we can stop and build these skills, we can respond to these in a much more calm, collected, and balanced way. And then relationship management, the one-on-one. How are we engaging one-on-one? And let me be honest, folks, as we're sheltering in place, we're seeing more of our people who were sheltered in place with than we ever probably wanted to. We still love them. We still value them. But we are seeing a lot of frustration with our relationship management because we're unable to separate. We're unable to have that time away. Relationship management is needed now more than ever. And then you say, Scott, what's the finish line of SEL? The answer is responsible decision-making. I want people to make good decisions. So do you. Oftentimes people come to me and say, okay, so that's great. How do we make good decisions? Well, the answer is that's the finish line, not the beginning. I'm going to simplify it for you. Self, others, decisions. That's as simple as I can make SEL. And this is a progression. So to make good decisions at the end, I always need to start with self. From the beginning, to be self-aware, to reflect. And then once I reach that point, I can get along with others. And then once I get along with others and know myself, then I can make good decisions. You have a logo up here. CASEL stands for the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. If you put CASEL, CASEL.org into your web browser, you'll get more information than you ever would want on SEL. So not music, but some fantastic thinkers, policy, research. It's all right there to help you, to help your districts. So here's a resource that we've come up with. And guess what? If you look at these verbs, kind of looks a little bit like a Bloom's taxonomy, but this is not a musical resource. This was something that came out of CASEL and the like that leads us to see ways that we can engage students through SEL. And in music education, we do a great job with action. We do a great job preparing repertoire. We do a great job getting ready for the concerts. I'm not sure if we do as good of a job with reflection. And here's the first time I'm going to say something that's going to kind of get us into a place of, he's going to go there. We don't know what the fall is going to look like. And we know that the challenges and the risks and what people are coming out with are unique for choirs specifically. Action is more than likely going to need to come down. To still have a high quality musical education, reflection is going to have to come up. So you say, what does this look like in music ed? I'm glad you asked. Here we go. The first thing is connection. In music education, we connect students. We connect dots. We bring in people from all walks of life into our room and we make music. That is our common bond. We connect students. We connect students with us. Again, the term developmental relationships. While we're doing that, we also have the opportunity to capitalize on repertoire. Music always has to be the heart of this. If ever it feels like we're doing music, stop, SEL time, music, wrong, stop. You're not capitalizing on the power of music. SEL and music work so well together because music is powerful. If you are not selecting repertoire that has heart, that has an opportunity to connect with your singers, then you're not picking the right repertoire. Repertoire selection with SEL in mind is a primary priority for me. If I don't know how it's going to connect with my students' lives, then I go back to the drawing board. That is certainly something that I always focus on. And there's so much good repertoire out there, especially in the choral repertoire world. Fantastic links to text and great composers who are making music that is relevant to your students' lives. Go there. And then experiences. I mentioned developmental relationships twice already, but developmental experiences, folks. We don't just talk about music, we do it. Our students engage in action. Now, I already said we saw that yin and yang, right? Action's coming down, reflection's coming up, but we're still going to be doing things. This is why in the music classroom, SEL is so powerful. This is why we're able to start to look at why SEL and music are perfect. And then reflection. That was the whole side of that right side of that yin yang and diagram. So the question is now, when and how for reflection? Traditionally, we reflect back. So I do a concert. The next day, I reflect back upon it. I get to this point and I reflect, how did things go? Great, still needed. But that doesn't capitalize on reflection. Reflection needs to be done before for me to envision how I'm going to put myself into the product. How am I going to make this personal? How can I set the stage for this experience to be incredible? And then during, what's going well? What's not going well? What are my strengths? What are my needs? What could I be doing better? How could I help others? And then after, thinking back. That's the what. How is a difficult question for me to answer because every single teacher is different and every single setting is different. Some of you might say, yeah, I'm cool writing in my classroom. Great, go there. If you want to write and that's a great way for your students to reflect, perfect. But that's not true for everybody. Well, what if we get our students to draw, to doodle, to have some kind of musical improvisation, a beatbox? What if they go outside and get a bunch of rocks and put them in a way that shows you how they're reflecting on a product? A Google form. Any of those ways are absolutely relevant and strong to get your students to reflect. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I'm pushing myself because, right now we're all being asked to teach in a way that we have never been taught. This is new for us. And I just downloaded and I'm going into Flipgrid. And I know many of you saying, wow, it took you this long to get into Flipgrid? Yeah, did it last night. Pretty excited. So that's the direction we're going to go. And if Flipgrid's the way to get them to reflect, I'm all about it. So here's a quotation that's going to guide us to this next part. The relevant question is not if an arts practice will affect a social and emotional competency, but how it will happen and what arts educators can do to improve the odds that the impact will be positive. We are getting recognized by a huge population out there that says the music teachers, wow, they have a space that they can do this and do this well. So as Brandon so graciously said at the beginning, I've had the privilege of writing 2 books. The first one, Music Education, Social and Emotional Learning, starts to look at what is SEL and look at opportunities for it to intersect with SEL. And then a student workbook that gives the activities in the first book practical side. It gives you worksheets. It gives you things that you can do to embed this into your work. And you're saying, Scott, worksheets, really? Some of you are thinking, yeah, 2 thumbs up, give me the worksheet. Some of you are saying, whoa, not it. Okay, so either way, if you copy and paste anything out of these books are meant to give you ideas. These books are meant to give you fodder. These books are meant to give you material to adapt. I've never seen you teach. I've never met your kids. There's no way that these materials, if you copy and paste anything out of here, that it's going to work perfectly. You need to think about the needs of your students to make it culturally relevant and to think about what it's going to look like so that you're able to teach SEL embedded into your classroom. So it's organic. So please, as we start to talk about some of these activities, I want you to really, really think about what you can do to adapt it up for our upper level, maybe boil it down for our younger students, but to think about a way that it can look like you and not me. So I talked about this idea that emotional vocabulary building is central to SEL, step 1. Now, I give you some emojis. You say, Scott, emojis, really? Yeah. If I were to ask you how you're feeling, that's going to give me something limited. But if I asked you to circle an emoji, then I'm going to start to get something. then I'm going to start to get somewhere that's going to give me some valuable information. Now, you say, Scott, what does this look like in music? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. One of my favorite works of music is Mahler's Second Symphony. Great, great piece, great music, talks about resurrection, talks about resiliency, talks about growth. And if I were to say, if you said, how does it make you feel? And I said, fine. Well, I don't have enough. That's not enough. That's not music education. And that's certainly not telling you what I feel about Mahler too. But if you asked me to circle emojis, I could do it every day of the week and twice on Sunday. Performance anxiety, right? We experience it. We see our kids get nervous as they go out on stage. We see them start to crawl inside themselves. Even our most outgoing and extroverted students can experience performance anxiety. Well, we know that there is a direct relationship between preparation and anxiety, meaning the more prepared we are, the less anxious we are. Well, guess what? Less prepared, more anxious. In music, this makes sense. And we can draw upon past experiences so that we can start to unpack that for our students and say, you know what? I get that we were nervous this time, but how prepared were we? Well, let's talk about it today during what we're all going through. I don't know. There's different levels of fear and anxiety about going out now. The world's opening up again. Some of you might say, I don't blink an eye going to the grocery store. Some of you might say, it makes me as anxious as I can become. But guess what? I guarantee you, if you go through steps to be prepared, you'll be less anxious. If you go through steps, if a mask, if a disinfectant wipe, all of those things that we know can help protect us, if we do those things, we will be less anxious. That is how SEL travels with us through the music classroom. We learn the skills, and it follows it with us the rest of the life. Now, my music. This is a great way to start to honor your students, what the music that your students value. So I would start by saying, what is your soundtrack? What are 3 pieces that represent you? What are some things that really, when you listen to, what do you feel? And then with that soundtrack in mind, tell us a story about yourself. It could be whatever story you're comfortable telling. But then I tell you a story that is meaningful to me with the soundtrack going on. Think about all the benefits that we can have through this activity. We get to know the students. We get to know the students' music. The students get to know each other. We've developed a double-sided arrow student to student, a great way to start to build those arrows. Now, this is a tough one, folks. In music education, now I'm going to give the choir community, the choral community, a nod in the right direction here, because you do a better job of this than we do in the band world or the orchestral world. But I still think we can all do better. That we need to put music in front of our kids that is not just dead white males. We need to do better. And, I used to think I did a good job, but then I looked back at my programs. I see this as a call to action, to put music in front of our kids that is representative of the kids. Because if we want our students to be able to see themselves as musicians, we need to be able to put music of professional musicians in front of them. There are so many fabulous pieces of music that are not composed by white males out there that we need to put that in front of our students. Now, the question is, going to clearinghouses. This is tough because so many of these composers are now self-published. So we need to do our homework. We need to go and we need to find these composers. And these composers want to have their music performed. They will engage with you. They'll engage with your students. And then we are broadening our students' horizons. Critical. Music for social justice. I've used the word social justice for a really long time, but I found a better term. And the term that's starting to emerge in our discussions is social impact. What is the social impact that you want to have? So here is a little bit of a worksheet that can guide our students on a scavenger hunt. Find a piece of music. Who is the composer? What is the race, ethnicity, gender identity, social issue? Get them thinking about what they are passionate about and the music that represents that passion. This is what's going to set students on a pathway to see the connection of music to their lives. And then a mission statement. This fall, we're going to struggle. We're going to struggle creating trust. We're going to struggle to create a common ground, especially if performance isn't going to be where we're going to be able to put our time and energy. at the level that we're used to. So having a mission statement is critical, and this can start now. So what are your group values? Have you asked your students what choir means to them? Have you asked your students what music education means to them? No time like the present. Ask them what they're missing. We're working on this for a huge national survey, and I'll make sure to share this out as soon as I get it. But to ask our kids, what is the value? What are the group values that they're missing? And then put it together into a mission statement. As much as I love group rules and what that looks like because it's collaborative, that still evokes behavior and punishment. We know that punishment rarely works in terms of creating long-term behavior change. So a mission, though, we can rally behind. So if we're not all on the same page, right here, folks, here's our mission. Here we go. And then brainstorming. Put it out there for the students. You know, why don't we ask them what they want out of their choral experience once we know the reality of what it will look like this fall? Ask them what they want out of the experience. You'll be surprised what you get. But it's not enough just to have one solution. So once we have this idea of we have a challenge in front of us, it could be musical, it could be personal, social, dissect what are possible solutions. If we teach our students to come up with solutions, not just one, multiple, then we have options. When we make bad decisions, it's because we only have one option and we keep on making that bad decision. But if we have options, if I go this way, this happens. If I go this way, this happens. Then I am starting to learn the process of decision making. Now, what's it look like for us? Well, I can't tell you the number of rehearsals that I've been in when I'm tapped out. There's a musical problem. I'm out. I don't have a solution. I've done everything that I know to do to fix this, and it's still problematic. Well, I used to get frustrated, and the students used to get frustrated, and we all used to get frustrated. Well, and no one won then. The new line for me is, I'm out. What do you got? And you will be amazed that the students will come up with suggestions to help us fix. They're on the inside. They have different ears. They have different ears than we do. They can help us guide the process and the product. You know, a lot of people right now are coming at me and saying, you know what, Scott, that's cool. I like it, but we already do this. I'm going to argue we can already do this. Some of us are, some of us aren't. There are days that I certainly don't, but it's not enough. For us to build these skills, to give our students the ability to encounter the challenges in their lives, we need to do better. And it needs to be purposeful, and it needs to be integrated, and it needs to be organic. So it feels like great music teaching. When done well, SEL is great music teaching. And why? You know, some of us, I'm going to be honest, and I hope no one here who's listening is in this boat. But some people are having to advocate for their programs. There are some short-sighted districts out there who are looking at the arts and saying, well, you can't do concerts. See ya. Well, that's not an option. That's not an option in my book. And SEL can serve as a powerful advocacy tool. Here are your reasons. Personal connection. We are connecting our students to an academic subject. You cannot make music without personally integrating yourself into it. This is not a textbook. We are not reading it. We are not taking a test. We are not replicating, if done well. We are giving our students an opportunity to insert themselves into the subject and deepen their position within it. School connectedness. Let me tell you about a buzzword that your administrators care about right now. School connectedness. How are we connecting students to the schools? And here's a quotation from Michelle Obama. It's the air that these kids breathe. It's the reason they get out of bed in the morning and come to school. How powerful is that? Your choirs and you, as their choir teacher, are the reason, literally, the air that they breathe. If we can show them that and highlight that for that our population that we meet, we're bringing students from all over the school into our room, your administrators will listen. Resiliency. No one's ever put on a concert without resiliency. There's been challenges. We've learned to fight through them, right? That's what we do. If we can make this purposeful and highlight that SEL and music education do this, not only are we going to teach our students to be resilient in our music classroom, we're going to give them the skills to fight through the challenges in their life, not understated through a pandemic. And self-awareness. Can I see myself in the music? This along with that connection, that personal connection. You know, I can't I can't perform a piece of music. I can't look at a piece of music without thinking, this is what I'm going to be good at, but man, that measure, not it. I'm going to need some help. I need to be self-aware. This is why music and self-awareness go hand in hand. And then when done well, no one can teach diversity as well as we do. No one can expose our students to music from diverse populations that allows our students to see the beauty of culture, the beauty of difference. There are two things that have traveled with humanity for as long as we have socialized, and that is music and food. And we can capitalize on the diversity of both and deepen it. High standards. You know, this is the tough thing. This is the tough thing, and this has gone through my head, that when we hit it right here and we say high standards, we have a definition in our head. We have that definition, our administrators have that definition, students have that definition, parents have that definition. And when I say to you, performance may not be able to have the role that it had, probably won't, in fact. In our head, we are all seeing the bar lower. Well, let me look you in the eye as much as I can, as compassionately as I can, and say, that bar doesn't exist anymore. That bar was obliterated by the pandemic. We have the opportunity and the challenge to create a new bar, that can be just as meaningful for our students and have high standards there, but it's not going to look the same. And then music is a cultural necessity. It is foundational for human life. When done well, music education and SEL and advocacy, in whatever capacity we need to look at that, can overlap. They can be separate, but they can overlap. And when all three of these things work together, man, you know, for those of you who are vegetarians, I understand, but that center cut tenderloin, it's perfect. When we have music education, SEL, and advocacy all working together, it's beautiful. So, Star Trek fans, here you go. Engage. Got the right haircut. We can get our students involved in advocacy. And even if you don't have to advocate for your program, we can engage them in a life lesson that's going to help them. So self, what is the personal and collective value of music education? Ask them that now. Ask if we are in some kind of remote education in the fall, ask them those questions. And then others, remember self, others, decisions, here we go. Understanding how this value will be perceived by those making decisions. Can I make an argument that's going to be effective? And then decisions, promoting the act of advocacy. Even if you don't have to advocate for your programs. What's a job interview? A job interview is self-advocacy. We can teach our students how to advocate for themselves. So important. For a long, long time, we've had performance in a larger font size. We really have. This is how we've defined ourselves. This fall, as much as it pains all of us to say this, because I guarantee you no one said, please, please, please me, give me a pandemic. I want a pandemic. Please, let's throw music education in the air. No one asked for that. But the reality of the situation is that this is what's going to happen to music this fall. Performance is going to have to take a step back because safety will be our moral compass. It has to be. But this represents a barn door swinging open to give us opportunity to create with our students in a new and novel way, to get them to respond to the music in a passionate way, and to connect music to all aspects of their life, and to do so through social and emotional learning by looking at self, others, and decisions. You know, I've been engaging with Elise Hackle here in Illinois, and she's a brilliant special education teacher. She has a background in music therapy. And she was talking to me about how do we really make SEL relevant and feasible for all? And the answer is, she brought up two words, adaptation and modification. And the answer is, for us as music teachers, we need to adapt. We need to adapt. We need to change the how, not the what. Choir means more to your students than they will ever be able to tell you. we need to change the how so that we don't lose the what in our schools and for our students. It is time to adapt. So I have a few choral specific thoughts that I wanted to throw out before I close up here and open things up for Q&A. You know, the dialogue right now around choir is, ooh, the plague. Okay, choir, no, right? We get this. We're like, okay, so we can do strings, we can do band, but we're going to have social distance and put, yeah. Well, choir, it's pretty much been identified as the most risky. Well, have we stopped to think, how does that make us feel? How does that make our students feel? And what does that look to navigate? You know, being called the most risky, yes, there is medical bioaerosol backgrounds to this, and I understand it all. I'm not suggesting for a heartbeat that we navigate away from that. But I do think we need to provide a space for our students to be able to say, this doesn't make me feel good. I want to sing. I know it's not safe to do it now, but we need to give our students a space to say that. And then focus on what we can do live. You know, the virtual ensemble, the virtual choirs that come out, they're gorgeous. They're well done, but they're not what we value about music education. We value the socialization. We value the togetherness. I think that the virtual choir can be one solution, but if you're out there saying, nope, not it, not me, don't feel bad. It is not the meat and potatoes of music education. So we need to go back to the drawing board, and there's great resources out there coming out from OCDA and other resources that I'm starting to see come out with saying, what can we do? What can we do? Let's focus on that. Take a week and mourn what we can't do, and then start to figure out what we can. And then looking at the power of the repertoire, you have a leg up as choir directors. The text alone gives us opportunities to connect with our students. I was working with a choir this last year, and we were doing pieces by Andrea Ramsey, and just, oh, wow. I saw the students' hearts open up on the choir room floor. Powerful. And this other piece of when singers are singing, you're the instrument. You know, if we critique singing, you know, it's not like, oh, my spit valve, my slide. No, it's the person. As we start to engage this dialogue about whether it's safe or not, we are really talking about humanity. We're talking about me. We're talking about you. And we need to embrace that with our students and still value that as we move forward. So for a long time, some of us have had to navigate this as a dichotomy. Remember those pendulums? Yep. It was either I do musical excellence or I get at the humanity piece. We don't have that luxury anymore. This fall, we have to do both. Our students need this. Our students need us to help them through reentry this fall. They come to us for help, and we need to be there for them. So this is our little guide. This is our 3.5-year-old Nathan. And a little while ago, we were in our living room, and my wife and I asked him to pick up his toys. And he just looked at us with his 3.5-year-old charm and said, no, I'm too busy playing. And my wife and I just looked at each other and were like, well, you got to be kidding me. After we sort of said, no, really, pick up your toys, I started to think about it. He has his priorities straight. We don't say we play an instrument. We don't say we put on, or we don't say we work an instrument. We don't say we put on a work. We play an instrument. We play. We put on a play. This is what it's all about. Don't put yourself in risk of getting fired or something like that. But I challenge you to do something in your life that gives you so much joy, even now, that it's safe, that you could go to someone and say, too busy playing. And then we navigate that. So, really excited about this one. New Facebook page that is out that links music education, social and emotional learning. Please come with us on this journey. When new things come out, I'm posting all the resources there. Things are literally coming out minute by minute. And this is the clearinghouse where I'm finding an opportunity to put all of these resources for you. So please join us on this, like the page, and come with us. If you have ideas or implementations, it's going to take a village, and we're all in this together. Other resources out there, should you need them. I mentioned Castle earlier. There's an NAFME document smack dab in the middle there about social and emotional learning. There's an advocacy document for social and emotional learning in music education that we've put together. Some of the leaders in this movement are from New Jersey, and www.selarts.org is the place to go to find how music and all the arts actually and SEL integrate. And it's beautiful. They've worked so hard, and it's the game changer. All of those things come together. And if you needed any more reason to believe in this, Edutopia is George Lucas's educational foundation, and almost everything that they put out there has SEL in it. So Star Wars believes in SEL. Finish with this. I believe everyone will soon come to realize that our arts educators are the secret weapon to implementation of social and emotional learning in our schools. Maurice Elias is one of the founding people of SEL, not a musician. He is seeing the power of what we do. Put us in. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Scott. We have time for just a few questions, and we'll start with, do you have additional activities or strategies to incorporate SEL in daily Zoom meets or in virtual learning if we're unable to meet in person this fall?
Yeah, it's a tough question, but the big thing that we're looking at is how do you engage students in a way that they can engage with each other, and how do you increase the chances that they're going to respond and be involved? Because no one likes Zooming, no one likes doing instruction. The one thing that I'm going to start by saying is be empathetic. If a kid doesn't have their camera on, there might be a good reason for it. And it might have nothing to do with the kid wanting to turn the camera on. Maybe the house is a mess and the mom said, don't you turn that camera on. I don't want everyone to see my house look like this. Right. Okay. So be empathetic that there are a lot of things going on. You're not meant to teach from home. They're not meant to learn from home. From there, start to think about ways that you can honor students' voice and choice. So a lot of the theory things that might come out are, so our minds go to, well, if I can't perform, then well, I'll just have them do score study or things like that. Okay, I understand that, but that's probably not going to be the best entry point. I would strongly encourage you to start by saying, let's get our heads wrapped around what you miss about choir. What do you love about choir? What do we want to get there? And allow the students to guide some of that answer to say, once they say what they value, then we're able to start to have a discussion of how can I curate some things to get you to respond to that. And I guarantee you, if you do things such as like my soundtrack, the soundtrack of my life, where the students can bring 3 songs in and tell a story, you are going to get a much more robust response rate, and the quality is going to be through the roof.
Thank you. Are there recent studies that you can cite that have quantitative results that prove the effectiveness of music and SEL for students and communities, asking for advocacy purposes to be able to cite specific studies?
Yeah. So there's a lot going on here in that NAFME pamphlet that I referenced, that let's see how good I can be at multitasking. That's probably not going to work. So I'll send it to Brandon, and Brandon can send it out. But that has a lot of our quantitative work that's happening. But the danger with this is we're still relatively new when it comes to music education and SEL. And we're music teachers. We should not for a heartbeat think that our job is to assess social and emotional competence. Our job is to assess music. And can we do so with heart? Absolutely. And can we look at how SEL and music education integrate? Beautifully. But the challenge is we're still early on. The good news is it's coming out fast and furious. I have 4 studies that are in the hopper, and we're working on this, and we're going to get them out as fast as we can so that you get this data. And please, the general answer is, if you need this information, email me. If you are in a position that you need this information, let me help you develop your argument. I'm working with a few districts right now on the exact same thing. So if you find yourself in the unfortunate position where you need data, there's a ton of it. Let me help you. More than I have time to give an answer. The short answer is we have strong data, and we can support that. We know that SEL does improve our musical mission, our cohesiveness, our school connectedness. And I'm not a huge fan of arguments that look at test scores. I'm not a huge fan of research that looks at attendance rates and graduation rates. I want to know what it does for music. But the answer is, if you have an audience that needs that other data, we have that too.
Great, thanks. Somebody is writing that an elementary classroom music in the district is mandatory. Do you have suggestions for building engagement in when students don't seem to want to participate on a regular basis, or with families that have little experience with music or see value in music education?
Yeah, that's tough. And I think some of this, for me, it always starts with the question of why. Why is there not that engagement? Why is there a disconnect between them wanting to engage with us? Oftentimes, I find that the answer, and this is often a tough pill to swallow for me, is that it's because I'm not engaging them with music that interests them, is that we are locking ourselves into our definition of what music education can be. The answer, even for our kindergartners, is that if we're going to build these life skills, that we need to give them an opportunity for voice and choice, and give them an opportunity to, even if it's, here's 2 songs, which one do you want to use for our opening song today? The fact that they had a choice is going to give a higher buy-in rate. So as we're looking at things like that, those are the little things. The other things are to prioritize your students' ability to self-goal set. So even kindergartners can look at us and say, if we say, you know what, what's one thing you think you can do better? They can respond to that, okay? We're asking them to goal set. What's one thing that they can do that would make them, ask them, what type of music do you want to have for our closing song today? Because especially with our little ones, I find that it has much more to do with what type of music we're engaging than how. They don't have these biases in terms of movement yet. If you ask them to move and dance and do folk dances and things, they're all in. That's taught out of them. So a lot of those things are things that we can look at. But if we need to take baby steps to get them to have buy-in, then the answer is we should have a noun that is going to be that hook, and then build them up into music that we want them to work with.
Great, thanks. We have somebody wondering what the plans are for ensembles at Lake Forest this fall.
It's a great question. And the leaders that I respect the most are the ones who look me in the eye and say, I don't know. The answer is we are moving slowly, and we're in the process of developing a plan. Know, please, that priorities in colleges are different than priorities in K-12, and are different than liturgical priorities. And there's different variables at play that make inherently some riskier, some, our 3.5-year-old, I totally get it. I don't know what it's going to look like if we're going to ask our kindergartens to keep masks on. I mean, that's just a reality. But college students too, right? Okay. So, I mean, there's going to be some challenges. So to answer your question, right now we are looking at what is safe and reasonable to do in person. We are fairly certain that we're going to be able to offer, from an instrumental perspective, some of those in person and live and synchronous. And from the choral perspective, we are still waiting for just those last NFHS studies to come out from Colorado State and from Maryland to firmly look at what we really want to do. But we are moving forward, preparing that in-person choral experience probably will not be a reality, at least in the fall to start. But we're changing the how, not the what. We're not taking choirs off of the books. Our students will still register, and we have an amazing choir director by the name of Annie Berry, who is going to rock star it because that's what she does. She's the choir director, and she's going to meet those students' needs.
Thank you. I think we're out of time, and I know that you have another session to get to. So on behalf of everybody here, I just want to thank you again. Please help me thank Dr. Scott Edgar for his really powerful and honest presentation, and for all of your comprehensive work in this area of our profession. So thank you, Scott.
Thank you. It's been my honor. Please use my email, be in touch, and let me know how I can help. And if there's a question that is more choral related, I have some great friends who are doing some great choral SEL work and I will tag them in up one side and down the other, and we'll get your questions answered. So from the bottom of my heart, be well, and continue to meet your students' needs now and in the fall.
Thanks, Scott.
Yep. Be well.
Okay, so we are now going to move to the last concert session of our virtual conference. Let me find my notes here.